Are you prepared to survive a summer power outage?
Hi, I'm Kylene.
And I'm Jonathan, and we are the Provident Preppers. If you're watching the news, you're seeing that there are record hot temperatures in all kinds of places all over the world. When this happens, power systems get stressed, and sometimes they break. And a lot of times we think about, winter power outages and how serious that can be. Well, it can be just as serious in the summer. There are lots of problems that can happen when things get too hot.
In this video, we have 7 different areas that we're going to focus on to help you stay cool during a summer power outage. We'll talk about little tools like this one, because even just something little like this can make a difference. We'll also talk about emergency backup power and different ways to stay cool, and we'll explore different options to be able to preserve the food in your freezer and refrigerator so that you don't lose all that valuable resource.
So let's get going. Now it's time to get ready for a summer power outage.
When it comes to a summer power outage, there are some unique circumstances and special considerations that we need to take into account in our preparations. So we have 7 categories for you that we think are really important to be able to prepare for this. The first is water storage. Wow, is that important? Second is lighting. And the third is, in a summer power outage, it is very likely that we will be experiencing some intense heat, and we need to have some backup cooling options. We need shelf-stable, easy to prepare foods. We need to be able to have some grid down cooking, both the device and some fuel. And we need to consider realistic backup power options that will work well in the summertime. And then the final one, number 7, is to have a backup plan for your refrigerator and freezer so that you don't lose all that food.
Let's jump into number 1, water storage. We always recommend that you have a minimum of 2 gallons per person per day for at least 2 weeks. And if you can store more than that, that's great. Water is always so important.
When you prepare for a power outage, water always really needs to be high on your priority list. The first thing you need water for is hydration. And the second is cooling. And that, in the summer power outage, you will be surprised how much water you're going to need to stay cool. Then there's hygiene, medical, first aid, sanitation, and food preparation.
This shows you some of your water options, all the way from cases of water bottles to 2-liter bottles that you repurpose, all the way up to 55-gallon drums and even larger totes if you have them available.
So as we're looking at this, one 55-gallon drum is almost a month water supply for one person. So if you have a family, you're going to need to divide that out. One case of Costco water has about 5 gallons in it, which would last one person for 2.5 days. So make sure that you get this calculated out. And we actually like to diversify our water storage. We like some that's portable and some that just stores a lot in a very small space.
We recently did a video on these water prepared tanks. We love these because it allows a lot of water storage in a very small footprint, and it's very easy to access.
And they're really cool because in this very small footprint, we have enough water for one person for 5 months. So for our family that's currently living at home, that would give us a 1-month supply of water. And that's really cool. We'll leave a link to Water Prepared in the description of this video for you.
And if you need other water-related instructions, we have a myriad of videos for you to go to and partake of. Now let's talk just a little bit about emergency lighting. Your days in the summer are going to be longer, so you won't have quite as much need for lighting, but you still do. You still need to have that for safety reasons, and you will still be having some night times or early mornings that you'll need to be able to see well.
Now let's talk a little bit about the lighting requirements, because before you ever design your plan, you need to know what it is that you need. Define your lighting needs. Do you need personal lighting or task lighting? Do you need area lighting like a lantern? Do you need some kind of hands-free lighting? And flameless. We recommend in the summertime you definitely have a flameless source. And then what is the duration of your need? Are you planning just to need it for a few hours, days, months, or you just don't know? If only we knew. If only we had a crystal ball to see into the future. Like I said, we really recommend that you avoid any type of flame light sources during the summer, because in the wintertime, it's nice to have that little bit of additional heat, but in the summertime, you're already sweltering and you don't need any flame source.
But regardless, you have to be careful because open flames draw children and grandchildren and some wives, and you just really have to be careful with those open flames.
I'm never going to live that down, am I?
You are not.
Battery-powered lights are a good option. However, once the batteries are gone, so is your lighting.
So make sure if you're going to have battery-powered lighting that you have a good store of batteries to go along with that.
Now, I'm a grandma, and so I have lots of glow sticks at my house because the children find great comfort. It's so much fun. When they come to sleep over at grandma's house, they always get to go to bed with a glow stick. It just is really comforting. And sometimes when really scary things happen to children, it's really good to be able to provide them some source of comfort. And so, you know, these are usually sold just in bulk. Just the cheap ones when you buy your fireworks, and so that's a good time when I usually stock up on a bunch of them. We have a whole video on grid down lighting if you have more questions. This is my very, very favorite. I love solar lights.
Yes, absolutely. These are so amazing. These stay in our windows. They're always fully charged. And the really nice thing about these is most of these have USB ports where you can charge your cell phone with them as well. So they are very versatile and very durable. We have had some hybrid lights for years now, and we love them.
It's funny because, okay, in our house, we have a lot of kids and we have a lot of grandkids, and everything that we have takes significant abuse. And John and I, before recording this video, we were just talking. I'm like, I don't think I've ever had one of these fail or break. I'm not saying that they can't, but they're just really dependable and there's no fire risk. And we can use them for years and just keep them recharged using the sun. Now, Hybrid Light is a really cool company, and they have agreed to give any of our viewers that want to use the promo code Provident 20% off of their order. And there's no limit to the amount of things that you can buy with it. But if you are considering and investing in one of these lights, use that code so you can get that discount.
All right, let's talk about backup cooling options. And this is one thing that's really different as far as a summer power outage. You need to have some way to keep yourself cool because that heat can be oppressive.
We decided that for this video, we were going to explore all the different ways that we could think of and that our friends could think of ways that they stay cool. And one of my friends, Kathy, shared this little secret with me. So right now, she uses this in her home every day during this oppressive summer heat. And she just takes her sheet and she dampens it and wrings it out, and then she puts it over her as she sleeps at night. And she said it works really well. Well, I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to sleep with a wet sheet on top of me. But for this little photo shoot that we did with Ben, I wet the sheet, and of course it's warm in our house, and I had him lay down on the couch. I put the sheet on him, and he said at first it felt really weird. But it took me a few minutes to kind of set up the shot and get ready. And by the time I was done and I told him he could get up, he didn't want to get up. He's like, Mom, it felt so good. And it's what it does is, remember how water just sucks the heat right out of you. And that's why being wet in the wintertime is so dangerous, because it can give you hypothermia and it's just really dangerous. Well, that's what we want to happen right here. So putting that wet sheet on top of you can definitely make you a lot cooler. Now, Kathy did say that on the really bad nights, she will have to get up in the middle of the night and get it wet again, and then she goes back to bed. The other thing that we discovered was cooling blankets, pillowcases, and a mattress pad. So Arc Chill actually creates some that are really neat. Now, we have some adult children who live in Arizona, and we had a little family reunion, and we're, exploring all of these possibilities. And I asked him if they'd ever heard of them, and he just said, yes, they are so cool. And he sleeps with them every night. So we were really excited to try these out. Now, there are different brands out there, but this is the one that we tried. I love when I lay down on that pillow. It's so weird. I don't understand how this really works, but it stays just like really cool. It feels cool to the touch. Now, same thing with it's a mattress pad is what they call it, but it's kind of a sheet that goes over there. It just stays really cool to the touch. Now the blanket, John and I tried to both sleep under it one night, and that didn't work so well for us because it's kind of really slick, right?
Yeah.
And so he kept stealing it all night long. So if you are going to use the blanket, I would recommend getting 2 of them. Even though this is a large blanket, it kind of doesn't look like it there, but even though it's a large blanket, I would recommend 1 per person because they're just kind of slick. And when you sleep with that blanket on you, you feel more comfortable having some type of a blanket or sheet on you when you sleep.
And make sure that you hang out in the coolest parts of your home or in your yard, someplace where you have a little bit of breeze or some shade, or in your basement. Wherever you can find a little bit of relief, that's great.
Ben is wearing a cooling scarf that we just picked up at Costco. They weren't very expensive. I think there was a package of 3 of them maybe in a package for $5. But what you do is you get it wet and then you wear it around your neck or your forehead or something. And same principle, right? It just sucks that heat away from your body. Once it dries out, you want to make sure that you get it wet again so that it continues to work. So there are commercial cooling hats and vests that you can also buy that can help you to stay cooler. So if you're really gearing up for this, you might want to purchase some of these items to have on hand, or you might want to start using them regularly just in the summer to help you stay a little bit cooler. Now you can make your own little scarves by creating a tube, just sewing up a little tube and filling it with water absorbing crystals. These are just little teeny tiny crystals, and the tubes that we make, I want to say that they're like 18 inches long and they're only maybe 2 inches wide. And we put only a tablespoon or 2 of these crystals in it. And then you sew it all up and you soak that in water. And those crystals just get huge and they hold that water. So when you use those, you just put it around your neck or your forehead, and that way it'll stay cold for a very long time. And then it kind of dries out and then you just get it wet again. So for homemade, these polymer water crystals are really nice.
Now let's show you how some of our grandkids like to stay cool with water.
That's how we stay cool.
Sometimes all you have to do is to be able to move some air to help get some relief. One of the things that we've found to be very effective is having fans in our windows. When we open those windows early in the morning and we pull in lots of fresh, cool air, and that helps cool down the house and provides that air movement that makes things cooler.
And a little trick that we learned is if you take a fan and put a wet towel a few feet in front of it and just have that fan blow on that towel, it's like a little evaporative cooler. It reduces the temperature in the room a little bit. It just helps a little bit with comfort.
So you may be asking, how are we going to have fans without electricity? Well, we have some really cool little options here. The one on the left is a camping fan. It's got lights and a fan, and it is charged by solar power. Or you can charge it using USB. It charges the internal batteries. The one on the right is just a fan with a clip on it that you could clip on anything. It's a good size fan. It runs off its own internal battery that you can charge using USB. It makes it really easy to have moving air when the power is out.
Now we also have a few other little fans that we tried, like spray bottles that have a little fan on the top and some different things. But one of the things that we discovered is some of these items are just junk. And if you use them for very long at all, they break. So make sure whatever it is that you decide to purchase, that it's a good enough quality to see you through the event.
And this is one of the coolest tools I've come across in a while.
He's such a geek.
I am. This is from Western Harmonics, and we reached out to Chris, the owner of Western Harmonics, and we are just so excited about this fan. This fan comes with a 100-watt solar panel, and it's a DC fan. You just put your solar panel outside. This fan blows a tremendous amount of air, and I am going to be reviewing this very shortly. So in the next week or so, watch for a review on this fan, including how to use it with a power bank. So this is just a really cool tool, and one that you may want to look into.
Now, one of the things about this fan is that the quality is incredible. And let me tell you, so we had it on the kitchen counter, right? And the cord goes out the solarium window to the solar panel that's outside. And it is blowing like crazy. It does have some different settings so that you can, have the high, medium, or low, but it moves so much air. But one of the funny things about it is I had gone into the garden and I had blocked the sun from the solar panel. And immediately the fan slows down and isn't moving, right? And so it really needs that solar panel. But most of the time during the summer, you're going to have some pretty good sun to keep this moving. John's right, it will run off of the battery bank also, so in order to use it at nighttime, you would need to use your battery bank.
That's right, and stay tuned for that review. But I wanted to mention real quickly what got Chris into this business, and that was that he was working as a volunteer in one of the hurricanes that happened in the South. And there were so many injured people, so many people without power, and it occurred to him that if they could even just move some air, it would literally save lives. Literally, we would save people because the moving air would help cool them down. And they were in people, maybe in rest homes or wherever, who were just struggling anyway, and then the heat was so oppressive that he said if we could just move air, it would make a world of difference. And that drove him to develop these products. And so, good for you, Chris. Way to go. We also want to introduce you to Morgan Rogue. And we reached out. We've been connecting with Morgan for a while now. And she built a really cool little swamp cooler that you can run off alternative power. So this is another great tool in your arsenal, something you may want to look at.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgan with Rogue Preparedness. Thank you so much for having me on your channel, Provident Prepper. I'm really honored to be here. This is a subject that's really important to me. We live off-grid in the desert, and we're always trying to find creative ways to stay cool. We don't have air conditioning. We have solar, so we're always trying to find creative ways. This DIY evaporative cooler is something that we build ourselves. You can get all of this stuff from Home Depot, hardware store, whatever, 5-gallon bucket. I have a whole video that talks about this. I will say that this evaporative cooler will work best in a dry environment. It generally won't work good in humid environments because there is a little pad in here that can get moldy really, really quick. Because what's happening with this evaporative cooler is that there's a bunch of water that goes inside. This gets all wet, as you can see, there it is. And then, from these little drip hose right here, it makes this wet, it brings it up, there's a pump and a fan, the fan pumps out the cold air, and that's essentially how it works. So in humid areas, that pad will get really moldy really quick, so I wouldn't recommend this for humid areas. If you do live in a humid area, there's something called a DIY chill cooler that you can make that, I'm going to put a picture here on the screen. I have not personally made it, but that looks like a really good option for more humid areas. There's nothing that can really get moldy or anything like that. If you do want to try that, especially if you want to be off grid, you are going to need some sort of solar or something to pump, and you will need some ice. That uses ice and water, so that's just some things to keep in mind with that. This uses just water. You just fill it with water. And it does use a pump, so you will need some sort of electricity to run this as well. The fan and the pump use electricity, so even a little bit of solar will go a long way with this. But I believe there's going to be a link to my video of us actually making this and talking about this, and if you want to go check that out to learn how you can make it for yourself. Thanks so much.
Having a well-stocked pantry is critically important all the time. You just need to make sure that you have plenty of food on hand. But for a summer power outage, there are a few things that are especially important. And the first of those are hydrating beverages. Water is fantastic. We need to have water, but a lot of times when you are sweating a lot and you need to be rehydrated, you need some of those electrolytes, some of the sugars and things put back into your body. So having some really good cooling beverages that your family enjoys on hand is an important thing. Now in our family, we cook a lot from scratch, just from, basic things. But as part of our food supply, we have some ready-to-eat foods like canned goods and granola bars, things that can be eaten directly out of the package or that you just heat and serve. And it's really important because in a summer power outage, you're really going to want to limit the amount of cooking. Now we're going to talk about how to cook, but we want to make sure that we can eat without cooking. Now, if your food supply is in canned goods and you have an electric can opener, make sure that you have a manual can opener, or you might have a lot of food and no way to eat it.
Let's talk a little bit about grid down cooking. For the month of November, we decided we'd do a grid down cooking challenge, which meant that we could not use any of our normal appliances that use natural gas or electricity. And it was a fun challenge, including cooking our Thanksgiving meal for a large crowd.
I think it was more fun for you than it was for me.
Well, it might have been, but we learned a lot in the process.
And we have an entire playlist week by week of what happened during that grid down cooking challenge. So if you're interested, you might want to go check that out.
So here you go. This is my absolute favorite. Solar cooking is a ton of fun, and it's amazing what you can do with solar.
And it doesn't heat up the house. I think when we first started using these solar ovens, the thing that was such a miracle to me is that I could take my food outside, put it in this box, and come out in a little while, and it was cooked, like magically. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. It really is. But, what a great way to use the free fuel of the sun when it's available.
Check out our emergency solar cooking video on YouTube if you want to learn more.
Now, because it's summertime, we are going to be cooking outside. Any cooking that's going to be done is not inside the house. And charcoal is a really great fuel because it stores very safely and it's not very expensive, right? And you get a lot of BTUs in that little tiny brick.
We also like rocket stoves because they efficiently use fuel to cook your meals.
And if you are going to cook inside, we strongly recommend something called safe heat. It's a form of canned heat that is safe to use indoors. It's used by caterers as a chafing fuel. But that little can is a 6-hour can. And so you've got an awful lot of cooking time or warming time inside of that little can. We created a video called Safe Indoor Cooking. And that would be a really good thing for you to check out if you want to know more about how to cook indoors. But this is all about summer, and you're going to want to take that stuff outdoors.
Let's talk for a couple of minutes about backup power for running critical loads. If you're going to use backup power, you need to understand how much energy you're going to need to run your critical needs. This little electricity monitor does a great job, and there's a variety of brands out there. These meters help you understand not only instantaneously what you're using, but what you use over a longer period of time. For example, right now my freezer is plugged into one of these, so I can understand how much that uses. So it turns on and it turns off, it turns on and turns off. So if you look at it at any given point, that's not going to give you a real accurate measurement, but over time you can see, okay, over this week it used this much energy. Then you've got a good number that you can understand how much you're going to need. This picture shows us running our freezer off of a humbless power bank. This was done so that we could understand if this power bank has sufficient capacity to run this freezer. Now, with the solar plugged into this, it absolutely does. This freezer uses a maximum of about 100 watts, and then it goes down to about a half a watt when it turns off. So this power bank will do a great job for running this as long as I keep getting solar to charge this battery bank. There are a whole variety of battery banks out there, or sometimes called power stations, all the way from the small ones that you charge your phone with to the mid-sized ones like the humbless.
The one in the middle is mine. It is a backup battery that my computer is plugged into and my server and my internet so that I can continue to work if the power goes out from home.
And on the right there you can see some large scale home power systems that you can use to run your entire home. Now, most of you won't be using something quite that large, but you could scale that back to something that you really could use. This backup power is especially critical for things like medical equipment. If you have some kind of medical equipment that you need to be able to run, this is a great way to get the job done.
And this is a little refrigerator that runs off of electricity, and it can be plugged into your car, but it can also be powered from this little battery bank. So if you have any critical meds like insulin that you need to keep refrigerated, you might want to look into something like this.
You can also check out our portable power bank video where we talk about the Generarc that we reviewed, and it did a really great job.
To recharge these battery banks, you can use household power when it's available, right? You can keep it charged that way. Or there are solar panels. This is just a very small portable set of solar panels that can be used to recharge it.
Or in this case, these are a little bit larger. These are 130 watts each, so 260 watts of solar, and you can see the cord going in through the window to charge the power bank that's on the inside.
This is Jonathan's dream come true.
This is something that I'd always thought about making, but then one came available and I was able to acquire it. This is basically your solar panels, your charge controller, your batteries, your inverter, and it also has a diesel generator so that if you have several days without sun, that generator will kick in and charge those batteries, and you can power a lot of great things with this trailer. And of course there's your fuel power generators that run on gasoline or diesel or propane or natural gas. Of course, if you're going to have one of these, you've got to make sure you have fuel stored safely and legally so that you can run that. You also have to remember that a lot of these do make a lot of noise, and you're kind of advertising that you have power. So they have their place, and I think they're great. They also make some smaller ones that are inverter generators that are a little bit more quiet. I kind of like those.
And now number 7, the big question. How are you going to take care of your fridge and your freezer so that you don't lose all that food? One of the ways is to just be really proactive in advance. If you do not keep your freezer all the way full, it's a good idea to line the bottom of it with jugs full of water. Now, don't fill those jugs quite all the way up. Leave a little bit of room for expansion. But by keeping water jugs frozen in there, it helps to be much less expensive to run your freezer in the first place. But also, when the power goes out, it's going to stay cold longer. And once all that water is melted, then you have additional drinking water.
This shows us using the power bank to run the freezer. And you can see up there in the corner, I have put on our freezers this meter that shows the temperature inside. So it's got probes inside of our freezers, and so you don't have to open that up to see how cold it is in there. So this is a great tool, not only to let you know if your freezer stops working, but also to let you know the temperature range that it's running in. Now, if you are in a crisis situation, you're not going to want to keep that freezer at 0 degrees. You're going to want to run that maybe up to 15 or 20 degrees so that you aren't using nearly as much energy to keep that food frozen.
And the big thing that should be obvious to everyone, but it's not, and that is do not open your fridge or freezer. It will stay cold so much longer if you just keep those doors shut. An idea that might be helpful is if you've got food in there that you want access to, get an ice chest, right? And put that food inside the ice chest and close that refrigerator right back up. Then you could open and close the ice chest and access the food that you want to have on the regular basis. But the more you keep that door closed, the longer it will stay cool. Power outages don't always affect everywhere. So is there a place nearby that has not been affected by the power outage where you might be able to go and purchase ice to keep it cool? Maybe is there some place you need to take off to while the power is out so that you and yours can be more comfortable?
And of course, there's still things that you would have to take care of before you left, but that may be an option.
It sure makes sure that the freezer and fridge were closed, right?
Yep.
Is it possible for you to preserve any of the food by bottling or drying it before it spoils? So that means that you've got to have a lot of systems in place. This is hamburger that's pressure canned. And in order to do that, you need a stove, you need the fuel, you need a pressure canner, you need bottles, you need lids, you need water. There's a lot of stuff that you need in order to accomplish this. But a lot of times freezers are full of meat that is very expensive. And this is one way that if the power goes out and you don't see it coming back on in the near future, you might be able to save some of that meat.
Either that or have a big barbecue.
Yeah, okay, true. But like the vegetables, could be dried. And you don't have to have a dehydrator to be able to do that. If you just park your car in the sun, crack the windows a little bit and put the like mixed vegetables on baking sheets, and they will be able to be dried right there in the car, especially when it's really hot.
And sometimes we just need to learn to live more simply and be happy with less.
After Katrina happened, we were researching to find out what we could do to prepare better from the lessons that were learned in Katrina. And a lady told me that the saddest thing that happened during that whole event was the day that the electricity came back on. And it was because all of her neighborhood suddenly was living out on their porches, because that's where it was cool and that's where they could be together. They were talking and sharing what they had, and they just became a real neighborhood. But as soon as the power came back on and the air conditioners came back on, everybody went back into their homes, living their separate lives. And she said it was just tragic. So learn to live simply and enjoy the people around you.
And learn to be a part of a community that helps each other and works together.
Now, the big question is, what are you going to do today to prepare to keep your cool during a summer power outage? Get out your pen and paper. It's time to make a list and figure out what exactly you need to put in your plan and implement so that if the power goes out when it's really hot, you don't have to be.
We hope we have shared some ideas that are useful to you, and hopefully you've made a list of some things that you can do to prepare for such an event. Earlier this year we talked about the polar vortex that hit Texas and how they were so unprepared for that. Sometimes we think that we don't have to really deal with this, and then it happens to us. So make preparations so that if it does happen, you've got it covered.
And make sure that you check out the links in the description, because there's some products in there that might be of interest to you. And also we've got links to some of our articles that we have written that could be really helpful in this situation. And now for the question of the day. What experience do you have with power outages during the heat? And what tips can you share so that we can all learn from your experience? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution